Welcome back to Fluent English Journey, the channel where we explore not only the English language, but also the ideas and reflections that help us understand life and ourselves. Today's episode begins with a phrase that might sound strange or confusing at first. Die before you die. What could that possibly mean? Take a moment to think about it. It sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Like something from an old poem or a mysterious riddle. And in fact, it is. This phrase comes from ancient spiritual traditions. One of the most famous uses of it comes from a 13th century Persian poet who wrote, "Die before you die so that you do not die when you die." It sounds deep and mysterious, and it is. But this episode is not about death in a physical way. It is not about fear or the end of life. It is actually about freedom. It is about letting go of the parts of ourselves that keep us trapped or stuck. It is about the things that make us small, reactive, or unaware of our true potential. What we are really talking about is an inner death, a kind of conscious letting go of the masks we wear and the stories we tell ourselves. It is about the identities we hold on to without even realizing it. Think about this. Have you ever felt the need to start over or to change who you are? Maybe it happened after a breakup, a career change, or even a quiet moment when you looked at yourself in the mirror and felt like you did not know who you had become. That moment, that feeling, is the first whisper of dying before you die. It is the beginning of transformation, the start of a new way of living. Many spiritual and philosophical traditions share this idea. In Sufi mysticism, in Stoic philosophy, in Buddhism, and even in modern psychology, there is a common understanding. If you can face your ego, your fears, your attachments, and your mental patterns now, while you are alive, you can experience a kind of rebirth. You can live a second life, a lighter and clearer life. Why does this matter? Because many of us live our days on autopilot. We react instead of respond. We chase approval from others. We repeat the same habits over and over again even when they do not make us happy. We carry identities like armor. We try to be the strong one, the successful one, the nice one. But what does it cost us to hold on to those roles so tightly? What do we lose when we are too afraid to let go of who we think we are supposed to be? This episode is an invitation. Not to die in a physical way, but to release, to question, and to let go of the roles and routines that may no longer feel true to who you are. It is a gentle reminder to ask yourself, are these things still true for me? Are they still mine? As we continue this journey, I will share reflections and stories that help you look within yourself. Some of them might challenge how you see your life, but in a soft and honest way. As always, I will speak in clear English to help you grow in your language skills while also guiding you through deeper and more meaningful ideas. So, are you ready? Let's step into the unknown together and begin the journey of dying before we die. Now let's take the next step, a step inward. Before we can talk about letting go, we have to understand what exactly we are holding on to. Let me ask you something. Who are you? Most people, when they hear this question, answer in a simple way. They might say, I am a teacher. I am a father. I am from Brazil. I am an introvert. I am a perfectionist. Or they might say, I am the kind of person who always helps others. These answers are fine. They sound normal and familiar. But if you look more closely, you will notice that most of these answers are not really about who you are. They're about what you do, where you come from, or how you behave. These are layers, roles, and labels that you have picked up over time. Some of them were given to you when you were young by your family, your culture, or your school. Others you created through your experiences, your job, and your relationships. Over time, you build a story in your mind about who you are and what you stand for. This is not necessarily bad. These identities give us a sense of stability and belonging. They help us feel safe in a world that can often be uncertain. They give us a way to describe ourselves to others. But the problem begins when we get too attached to them. Sometimes we hold on to these roles so tightly that we start to believe they are permanent. We forget that they are just one version of us, shaped by a certain time and situation. We forget that we are constantly changing, growing, and evolving. When we identify too deeply with our roles, we limit ourselves. We stop exploring who we could become. Dying before you die means remembering that you are more than any label or identity. It means letting go of the false layers so you can find what is real underneath. So today, take a moment to reflect. Who are you beyond your job, your past, or your habits? What would remain if you gently let go of all the labels? That quiet awareness, that presence inside you, is your true self. And that is where freedom begins. Think about it for a moment. How often do we say things like, "I could never do that, it is just not me," or "I am not the type of person who takes risks"? These are not facts. They are beliefs. Beliefs that we have learned so deeply that we no longer question them. And when we hold on to these beliefs too tightly, our identity becomes like armor. We use it to protect ourselves from discomfort, uncertainty, or change. We hide behind our job titles. We play the role of the responsible one, the quiet one, or the problem solver. We learn to act in ways that match the image we have built, even when that image is no longer true or helpful. But here is the problem. The same armor that protects us also traps us. When we hold on too tightly to who we think we are, we close the door to who we might become. We limit our choices. We say no to new experiences that do not fit our old identity. We stay in relationships or jobs that no longer bring us life because they match the picture we have created of ourselves. So let me ask you again, who are you really? If you removed the labels, if you were not defined by your job, your country, your personality, or your relationship status, what would be left? This is where the conversation becomes deeper. You find yourself saying things like, "I have always been the peacekeeper," or "I am just not the kind of person who takes risks." Pause and ask yourself, is that really true, or is it just something I have gotten used to believing? Because dying before you die is not about darkness. It is about freedom. It is about letting go of the fixed identities that keep you repeating the same patterns. It is about releasing who you thought you had to be so you can meet who you actually are. It is not grim. It is liberating. When you stop clinging to the ego's narrow version of yourself, you create space, a wider, more open kind of life that feels alive and real. So, take a moment to reflect. What identity are you still holding on to, not because it feels true, but because it feels familiar? And if you were to set it down, even for a moment, who might you become? Now, let us move into the next part of this journey, quieting the inner noise. Let's slow down for a moment. Not just in the story, but inside ourselves. Take a deep breath. Because before we can let go or see clearly, we have to face something that most of us live with constantly but rarely notice directly, the nonstop stream of thoughts running through our minds. We all have it, that inner voice. Sometimes it sounds like our own. Sometimes it sounds like a parent, a teacher, or a critical version of ourselves we picked up long ago. And it never really stops, does it? It is like background noise that never fades. It narrates everything. It judges, worries, compares. It tells us what we should do, what we should not do, what other people might be thinking. It replays arguments and rehearses future conversations that may never happen. It whispers, "What if I fail? What if I said the wrong thing? What if I am not good enough?" This is what we often call mental chatter. It might seem harmless, just thoughts, but over time, it shapes how we feel and how we live. It creates tension, fuels anxiety, and traps us in patterns of overthinking and self-doubt. You may have heard phrases like "get in your own head" or "go down a rabbit hole." Both describe how quickly our thoughts can spiral. And have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to keep thinking about the same problem without finding any solution? That is rumination. It is like chewing the same piece of gum again and again. It has no flavor, but we just keep chewing. We do not only replay regrets, we also overthink possibilities. We second-guess ourselves. We worry about how others see us. And it drains our energy. But because everyone does it, it feels normal. We rarely stop and ask, is this helping me? Now, thinking itself is not the enemy. Our ability to think, plan, and imagine is one of the greatest human gifts. But when our mind becomes noisy, when it spins constantly without awareness, we lose something precious. We lose presence. We lose contact with the moment that is happening right now. So, what can we do? Should we try to stop thinking? Not exactly. You cannot silence the mind completely. The goal is not to eliminate thought, but to see it clearly, to create a small space between you and your thoughts. Because when you can observe your thoughts instead of automatically believing them, you begin to find real freedom. Here is one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself. Who is the one listening to these thoughts? When was the last time you simply noticed your thoughts without reacting to them? Most people rarely do. We move through our days caught inside the noise of our own minds, believing every word that voice says. We identify so deeply with our thoughts that we forget something important. We are not the voice in the head. We are the one who hears it. Learning to notice your thoughts without judgment is one of the most freeing things you can do. This is where simple practices become powerful. Not because they are popular, but because they gently train you to see your mind clearly. One helpful practice is mindfulness. It is not about sitting perfectly still or emptying your mind. It is simply sitting, breathing, and observing what arises inside you. You watch your thoughts come and go, just like clouds moving across the sky. You do not fight them. You do not try to control them. You just notice them. Over time, you start to realize that thoughts are just movements in the mind, not truths you have to obey. Another simple tool is journaling. Not the kind where you write a neat summary of your day, but the kind where you just let your thoughts spill out freely. Write without worrying about grammar, spelling, or structure. Just let it flow. The act of writing slows the mind down. It turns thoughts into words you can see. And once they are on paper, they lose some of their power. You begin to see patterns. You start to recognize which thoughts are driven by fear or habit, and which ones come from a quieter, wiser place within you. Then there is the breath. Something as simple as stopping for a moment and taking 3 slow, deep breaths can change your entire state of mind. Breathing pulls you out of your head and brings you back into your body. It reminds you that life is happening right now, not in your thoughts about the past or the future. The breath is always here, steady and alive, waiting to guide you home to the present moment. These practices will not erase your thoughts. They are not meant to. What they do is remind you that you are not your thoughts. When you begin to see that clearly, something shifts. You stop reacting to every worry or judgment that passes through your mind. You start to find a quiet space beneath the noise. That space is where real peace and clarity live. It is also where creativity and self-awareness grow. When you spend time in that stillness, you start to notice something else. Many of your thoughts are not new. They're recycled fears and old beliefs that no longer serve you. Some are voices you inherited from other people, from family, from society. They might say things like you are not enough, or you must always stay in control. But these voices are not truth. They are just echoes of the past. The mind resists change because the ego feels safer in what is familiar. Even if the familiar is painful, it feels predictable. That is why letting go can feel uncomfortable at first. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Imagine walking through life carrying a heavy backpack. You have carried it for so long that you barely notice the weight anymore. Inside that backpack are fears, expectations, disappointments, and outdated ideas about who you are supposed to be. Some of those things are not even yours. They were handed to you by others. But they still weigh you down with every step. Now imagine setting that backpack down for a moment. Feel the lightness in your body. Feel the space that opens up inside you. That is what letting go feels like. It is not about giving up or becoming careless. It is about releasing what no longer helps you grow. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what is heavy and unnecessary. It means you stop trying to control everything that is out of your hands. It means you stop defining yourself by an old image that no longer fits. Letting go is not weakness. It takes courage. Sometimes it is dramatic, but more often it is quiet and unseen. It can look like choosing to forgive someone who will never apologize. It can look like finally resting after years of overworking. It can look like saying no to something that drains you, even if it disappoints others. When you release control, something begins to change. Energy that was stuck in anxiety begins to move again. The mind feels clearer. The heart feels lighter. You breathe more deeply, not just with your lungs, but with your whole being. I remember a time in my own life when I reached a breaking point. On the outside, everything seemed fine. I was working hard, meeting goals, doing what everyone expected. But inside, I was exhausted. I kept pushing myself to prove my worth. I kept saying yes when I wanted to say no. I thought slowing down meant failure. Eventually, I could not keep going that way. I felt empty and lost. So I did something that felt strange at first. I stopped trying to control everything. I allowed myself to not have all the answers. I let go of the image of being the person who always had it together. That surrender changed everything. It did not destroy me. It gave me clarity. It opened space for something new to emerge. The energy I used to spend pretending to be strong became the energy I used to live more honestly. What I learned is simple. You cannot grow if you are still clinging. Growth needs room. It needs air. When you hold on tightly to old ideas, to control, to an outdated version of yourself, there is no space for transformation. Letting go creates that space. It allows life to move through you again. It allows new experiences, new insights, and new energy to flow in. So the next time you feel anxious or overwhelmed, do not try to fix it right away. Just pause. Breathe. Watch what your mind is doing. Notice the story it is telling you. And remember, you are not that story. You are the awareness that sees the story. You are the space beneath the noise. You are the one who can choose to let go. That is why letting go can feel like such a deep relief, even when it is frightening. What you are actually releasing is not your strength or your power. You are releasing the illusion that you must control everything for life to be okay. Think about how much time we spend trying to manage things that are far beyond our control. We worry about what other people think. We replay the past again and again. We try to plan every step of the future. We hold on to relationships, jobs, or habits that feel safe simply because they are familiar. Even when they no longer bring us peace, we stay because they are predictable. But here is something important to remember. Holding on is a choice, and so is letting go. So ask yourself gently, what am I still holding on to that no longer helps me grow? It might be a story about your past, a belief about your limitations, or a version of yourself that no longer feels true. Sometimes it is something subtle, like the need to always be right, the constant pressure to be liked, or the fear of letting people down. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what is not yours to hold. It means you release what no longer fits who you are becoming. And yes, it might feel uncomfortable at first. The ego does not like uncertainty. It prefers what is familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain. But beyond that discomfort lies lightness. There is space, movement, and freedom waiting on the other side. This is what dying before you die truly means. It is not about ending your life. It is about ending the patterns, stories, and attachments that keep you from living fully. It is about setting down the emotional weight you have been carrying out of habit or fear. It is about removing the layers of performance until what remains is your quiet, honest self. So as you move forward, start to notice what you have been carrying out of obligation or fear. Then ask yourself, what might open up if I gently put this down? Not everything you carry is meant to stay with you forever. Some things are lessons, not life sentences. And this brings us to the next part of the journey, rebirth. Who are you without the mask? We have explored identity, ego, the noise of the mind, and the courage it takes to let go. Now we arrive at the other side, the place of emergence, where something new begins to unfold. But this process is not about becoming someone completely different. It is not about reinventing yourself with a new image or title. It is not about changing your outside world overnight. It is about uncovering what has always been within you, the part that has been waiting patiently beneath all the noise, the striving, and the roles you have been playing. Imagine a seed. From the outside, it looks small and ordinary. You would never guess what it holds inside. But for that seed to grow, something dramatic has to happen. The shell must break open. From the seed's point of view, that might feel like destruction. The protective surface cracks. The old shape dissolves. The comfort of containment disappears. But that breaking is not death. It is transformation. It is the beginning of new life. This is what inner growth feels like. When you let go of old identities, it can feel as though something in you is falling apart. But in truth, something deeper is being revealed. The death of the ego is simply the seed cracking open so that your truest self can emerge. This rebirth is not dramatic or loud. It shows up in small, quiet choices. You begin to move with less resistance. You start to notice what actually feels aligned instead of following old habits. You listen more closely to your intuition. You begin to live from authenticity instead of approval. The world often rewards performance. It applauds success, not honesty. It praises achievement, not presence. But when you stop chasing the applause and start listening to your own truth, something remarkable happens. You become more real. You become more yourself. Not the version that tries to impress or please, but the version that feels calm, grounded, and alive. Words like resilience, authenticity, and transformation can sound like big ideas, but they are simply reflections of this process. Resilience is not just about pushing through pain. It is about trusting that growth can come from what has been broken. Authenticity is not about saying everything that crosses your mind. It is about living in a way that reflects your inner truth. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming fully yourself. Sometimes people fear that if they let go of their identities and masks, they will disappear. But the opposite is true. When you take off the mask, you do not vanish. You become visible. You stop being who you were told to be, and you begin to live as who you truly are. This is the quiet gift of dying before you die. It is not the end. It is the beginning of seeing yourself clearly, without the layers of fear and expectation. It is the moment you realize that you were never lost. You were simply buried under everything you thought you had to be. When that illusion falls away, what remains is peace. What remains is presence. What remains is you free, alive, and unafraid to grow. It is a return to yourself. To the self that feels softer but not weaker, open but not naive. A self that no longer carries the constant pressure to achieve, please, or perform. Instead of trying to prove your worth, you begin to simply be. And from that state of being, life starts to feel less like a battle and more like a flowing conversation. So let me ask you, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you are not performing or proving or protecting? If that question feels difficult to answer, that is completely fine. You do not have to find the answer right away. This journey is not about fixing yourself. It is about meeting yourself, slowly, gently, with curiosity and care. Often, the most honest way to meet yourself is in silence. It can happen during a quiet walk in nature, while painting or writing, or in moments when no one expects anything from you. In those spaces of stillness, You begin to rediscover the person underneath the noise. And what is truly beautiful is this: the people who are meant for you, the ones who connect with your true energy, will be drawn to that version of you. Not to the perfect version, not to the one who tries to impress or please, but to the one who is real, calm, and present. Yes, the process of inner death, of letting go of old identities, can feel uncomfortable. It can be uncertain and tender. But the rebirth that follows is worth every moment of discomfort. Because you are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone real. Someone whole. Someone alive in ways you did not even realize you had been missing. Now let's bring this idea down to everyday life. Because transformation is not only about big realizations or life-changing moments. It often happens quietly, in small steps that may seem ordinary, but are deeply meaningful. I like to call these micro-deaths and micro-rebirths. These are the small moments when you let go of an old pattern and make a new choice. For example, when you say no to something that drains your energy, even though you feel guilty. That is a small death, the death of the part of you that always said yes to please others. But at the same time, it is a rebirth, the beginning of honoring your boundaries and your own needs. Or maybe you decide to change a daily habit that no longer feels right. It might be something simple, like taking a short walk before checking your phone in the morning, or something bigger, like stepping away from a way of thinking that limits you. Every time you interrupt an old pattern and choose differently, you are experiencing a micro-death and a micro-rebirth. Another example is when you apologize sincerely after realizing you made a mistake. It might feel like you are letting go of your pride, of the image of always being right. But that moment of humility is a small rebirth, a doorway to deeper honesty, connection, and peace. These small inner deaths are not dramatic. They're quiet moments of awareness where you stop reacting out of habit and begin acting with intention. They're chances to ask yourself, am I reacting automatically or am I choosing consciously? Most of us live much of our lives on autopilot. We repeat patterns because they feel familiar, not because they serve us. But every time you pause and breathe before reacting, you open a small space for growth. Growth is rarely comfortable. It often feels awkward or uncertain. But that discomfort is a sign of life moving through you, reshaping you into something truer. Think about the last time you stopped yourself from reacting in anger and instead took a deep breath. Or when you asked for help even though you usually try to handle everything alone. Those moments may have seemed small, but they are the foundation of transformation. And the best part is that you do not have to wait for a big crisis to start this process. You can begin right now. Today, you can check in with yourself once or twice a day and ask, what am I holding on to? What can I gently let go of? How can I show up a little more honestly? Life is made up of small moments like these. When you practice letting go and beginning again each day, you start to live with more flow and authenticity. It becomes a rhythm, a dance of dying and being reborn again and again. So as you continue this journey, notice your own micro-deaths and micro-rebirths. Notice when you are moving on autopilot and gently guide yourself back to awareness. Celebrate every time you let go of something that no longer fits. Remember, this is a lifelong process. There is no final destination, no perfect version of you waiting at the end. There is only the ongoing unfolding of who you already are, imperfect, growing, and beautifully human. Every day, you are learning to live more truthfully. Every small death makes room for new life. And every quiet rebirth brings you closer to your most honest self. As we have been exploring the idea of dying before you die, it helps to take a step back and look at how this theme appears in different stories, cultures, and traditions around the world. What is truly fascinating is that so many people, across time and place, have discovered the same truth. Real transformation always requires a kind of death. Not a physical death, but an inner one. It is a process of letting go of the old, shedding what no longer serves you, so that something new can be born within. You can see this idea in many forms. For example, the great Persian poet and Sufi mystic Rumi, who lived in the 13th century, wrote often about this spiritual death and rebirth. His poems describe the soul dissolving into love, the burning away of the ego, and the uncovering of a deeper light that has always been there. For Rumi, dying before you die means surrendering the small self, the part of you that clings to control or identity, so that you can experience a greater connection with the divine and live fully in the present. He believed that losing yourself in this way does not destroy you. Instead, it allows you to finally come alive. We can also see this theme in the work of Joseph Campbell, who studied myths and stories from many cultures and created the idea of the hero's journey. His framework has shaped countless stories, from ancient legends to modern movies. In every version, the hero must go through a symbolic death before they can return home changed. This death often takes the form of a descent into darkness, an experience of fear, confusion, or loss. It is the part of the story where the hero faces what they have been avoiding. Without this descent, there is no transformation. The hero cannot truly grow without first letting go of who they used to be. In Buddhism, a similar truth is expressed through the teaching of non-attachment. This philosophy teaches that clinging to people, possessions, or fixed ideas brings suffering. To find freedom and peace, one must learn to let go. This does not mean losing everything or rejecting life. It means releasing the tight grip we hold over things that constantly change. In this way, every moment can be a small death and a small rebirth. We die to our rigid beliefs, our judgments, and our fears, and we are reborn into openness, compassion, and awareness. This process is not something that happens only once. It is a daily practice of releasing and beginning again. We can even see this pattern in modern stories from films and literature. Think about a movie like Inside Out, where the young girl learns that true happiness comes not from avoiding sadness, but from accepting all emotions as part of life. She has to let go of the old idea that only joy is good and accept the truth that every emotion has meaning. Or think of novels where characters go through loss, failure, or heartbreak and emerge more grounded, wiser, and more authentic. Each story carries the same message. To become who we really are, something inside us must end. Something old must die so that something more real can live. Now let us bring this reflection closer to your own life. What story have you been telling yourself about who you are supposed to be? Maybe you have been living the story of the perfect achiever, always reaching for more. Or perhaps the story of the loyal friend who never says no. Maybe it is the story of the strong one who never shows weakness, or the careful one who avoids mistakes. Ask yourself, where did this story come from? Did you choose it, or was it given to you by family, by culture, or by your past experiences? When you begin to notice these stories, you give yourself the gift of awareness. You begin to see that you have been living inside a script, one that may not truly reflect who you are. From that awareness comes freedom. You can start to ask yourself, does this story still serve me? Does it help me grow, or does it hold me back? And if it no longer fits, you have the power to write a new one. Transformation is not only about changing what we do. It is also about changing the story that shapes how we see ourselves. When the inner story changes, the outer world begins to shift too. Your actions, your choices, your relationships all start to align with something deeper and truer. In this way, dying before you die becomes more than just a spiritual idea. It becomes a shared human experience, something that connects us all. Across every culture and generation, people have felt this same truth. To truly live, we must first be willing to let go. It is a gentle reminder that life is a continuous rhythm of endings and beginnings. We die to our fears, our masks, our old stories, and we are born again into honesty, openness, and love. And this is not something that happens just once in a lifetime. It is happening every day, in every moment you choose awareness over habit, truth over comfort, and authenticity over performance. That is the heart of dying before you die. It is not an ending. It is the most beautiful beginning of all. As we bring this episode to a close, I want to leave you with a final thought. It is a thought that has quietly guided seekers, philosophers, and everyday people through their own journeys of transformation. The phrase "to die before you die" is not about giving up. It is about waking up. Imagine for a moment that the ego, that busy, protective part of you that always tries to control, perform, and define, is not something you have to destroy or reject. Instead, think of releasing the ego as expanding your sense of who you truly are. It is like opening a window after years of being in a closed room. Fresh air rushes in, and you suddenly realize how much more space there is to breathe. You are not losing yourself. You are becoming more yourself. This change is quiet but powerful. Like a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon, you do not disappear when the old self falls away. You transform. You unfold into something wider, lighter, and freer. So, here is a question to keep close to your heart. What would shift if you truly believed that nothing essential can ever be lost? That the core of who you are, your true self, your inner light, cannot be taken away by circumstances, mistakes, or time. It is always there, waiting beneath the layers of fear, expectation, and habit. When you begin to live with that trust, the fear of change starts to fade. The fear of letting go begins to soften. You start to see discomfort not as something to escape, but as a doorway into deeper understanding. You realize that every ending holds the seed of a beginning. Every death carries within it a quiet rebirth. You do not have to have all the answers today. The journey inward is not a straight line. Sometimes it winds through confusion, sometimes through calm. What matters is that you keep walking with curiosity and kindness toward yourself. That is how real growth happens, not through pressure, but through gentle awareness. As you move forward from this moment, I invite you to ask yourself a few gentle questions. When was the last time you truly listened to your inner voice, the one beneath all the noise? How much of your daily life are you living consciously, with intention? And what small death can you embrace today? What belief, habit, or fear can you release to make space for a small rebirth tomorrow? Transformation is not a one-time event. It is a daily rhythm. It lives in the small decisions, the quiet pauses, and the willingness to begin again. So if something in this message has touched you, I encourage you to share it. Talk about it with someone you trust. Write about it in your journal. Sit with it in silence. Let it become part of your ongoing conversation with yourself. Because in the end, To die before you die is not about endings at all. It is about living more deeply, more truthfully, and more fully awake. Thank you for being here with me on Fluent English Journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep coding your own story in English, one word, one breath, one moment at a time.